talking about one of the biggest trendsetters in the marketing industry right now, which is quickly becoming a major player in a $1 trillion marketing industry, NFTs. So, let's look at the trends that we can be expecting with NFTs in 2022. And with that in mind, I would like to welcome our panelists. First and foremost, let me welcome Tejas Chopra. Tejas is the TEDx International keynote speaker on the topics like blockchain, cloud computing, general software development. He's an NFT enthusiast, and during the day, he works for a very small company nobody ever heard of called Netflix as a senior software engineer. Hi, Tejas. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Delighted to be a part of this panel and so honored to be sharing the space with folks from that have a great background in NFTs and excited to participate, learn, and contribute in whatever way possible. Thank you for having me here today.
Thank you. Next, we have a gentleman all the way from Japan. We actually, I believe, got two Japan-based individuals. First is Norbert Gehrke. Hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. Norbert? Excellent.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, so Norbert is the founder of Tokyo FinTech. It's a non-profit organization with the largest active community of financial technology enthusiasts in Japan. You have over 3,500 members currently, if I'm not mistaken.
Thank you, Sean. Thanks for having me. Yeah, so I spent most of my career in capital markets. So I built technology in the broker-dealer, basically in markets around the world. And we've been moving back and forth a bit. We've been back in Japan since 2017 and now focused on basically helping to educate people on crypto, blockchain, and innovation in financial services generally.
Great stuff. And I think we've got a peer of yours, also based in Japan, Jose Mitamura, who is the CEO of Cointelegraph Japan, which is world's leading digital media covering Bitcoin, crypto, Web 3.0 and more. Hi, Jose, welcome to Connect Club.
Thank you, Sean, for inviting me to this panel. Happy to be here. It's 1 a.m. here, so I'm not turning on my video because I look sleepy. So, but I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
We are safer looking at your avatar. I got you.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. And also allow me to introduce, last but not least, is Steve Kaczynski. I hope I'm pronouncing that one correctly, yeah? Steve, did I get it right?
No, you got it right. And just to give a little bit of extra context on my background for people, I've been in NFTs for a little bit. Since the beginning of the year, I co-authored the first Harvard Business Review article on NFTs. So just helping sort of establish sort of mainstream credibility for NFTs. And I co-founded the Decentralized Generation Network, or DGen Network, which is a just kind of decentralized media company where we let people come in and write, kind of give opinions and do podcasting and things like that. So been my passion for a little bit now. But that HBR article was really kind of my my real jump into NFTs and kind of helping them establish a place in sort of the mainstream.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. We also know you work as a brand communication manager at Nestle.
Yeah, so my day job is in marketing and public relations. So I've been doing that at Fortune 500s and multinationals for about a decade as well. Okay.
Well, allow me to start by asking, what was the biggest development in your opinion was this year in the NFT space, with any other crypto use cases that really kind of excited you, or maybe even disappointed you this year? Let's start with you, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most exciting thing this year is kind of the most, ubiquitously used sort of NFT platform, I would say, with NBA Top Shot. The reason why I find it exciting is, NFTs traditionally are Ethereum based. And I actually think one of the things that we'll be moving away from is that Ethereum based NFT trend in 2022. As I'm talking to venture capitalists, as I'm talking to like larger brands, what I'm learning is that gas-based sort of like Ethereum-based network on that proof of work network, which requires people to pay large gas fees in order to do transactions, and a huge technology on-ramp, is sort of not the way that is going to be the way of the future unless Ethereum sort of pivots to that Ethereum 2.0 they've talked about. So I think to me, the biggest sort of boon that I've seen in NFTs this year, I mean, people can talk about things like Bored Ape Yacht Club and large NFT projects, which have certainly been huge in the mainstream. But I think NBA Top Shot, when you look at the fact that it's transitioned the very relatable concept of digital collectibles onto a frictionless, gasless platform, and people are going to be able to buy and sell those basketball moment NFTs on there without having to even know that they have a crypto wallet or an NFT wallet is where the space is going. And so I think to me, that was the largest development this year because I think it on-ramped a lot of people into the space. The amount of active wallets on there without people actually knowing they're using and buying and selling NFTs is huge. And so I think that's just big because from looking from a big picture perspective, you have the opportunity for brands and large, companies to come in or, smaller independent artists to say, we can build in the same way and have people not even use the term NFT, but say, I'm collecting Top Shot moments or I'm getting tickets or I'm getting something other or another type of collectible. So to me, that was the biggest story of the year, at least was NBA Top Shot and the way it exploded because it's a worldwide game. It brought people in. It got people into NFTs without even realizing they're getting into NFTs, and it allowed for that frictionless transaction on a gasless platform where instead of paying extremely high transaction fees, they're just buying and selling things they love. So I think that was probably the big story for me this year, and something I think will actually continue to be a trend on into 2022.
Okay, allow me to kind of jump in here. Thank you very much for sharing that. But I know a topic of carbon footprint aware software development is very close to Tejas's heart. Tejas,
Yes.
what do you think? Are we going to see as a trend more sustainable NFTs in 2022? Do you
Yes,
think? Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I do believe that is where the world will converge to, because I think that one of the bigger problems of the, it was just mentioned right now with Ethereum and with proof of work is that it actually is an energy gobbler. It is true that compared to the industries that it is disrupting, the energy impact is still less, but it is still there. And we do have alternatives like proof of stake and delegated proof of stake, and then there's proof of history now with Solana that are not as much energy impacting to the environment. So I do feel that is where we will trend to as the world will move towards. But I also feel that a lot of the development today in the NFT landscape is happening at the application layer. And a lot of network glitches and problems are occurring at the infrastructure layer. So I feel that in 2022, there will be a lot more focus on the infrastructure side of things for NFTs to really become mainstream. And I do agree that NBA Top Shots is actually a very good candidate for showing the power of NFTs, because to the end user, they do not even know that they are interacting with the blockchain. They are just continuing to do what they have been doing in the past, and it is just powered by the blockchain. And I feel that is a great user experience story. And if we can have the same kind of experience in different verticals, that's when I think that NFTs will really become mainstream.
Jose, if NFTs become a mainstream, does it mean the next trend would be the vast development of Web 3.0? What do you think?
Yeah, I totally echo what Steve and Tejas said about sustainability being key. And I see this as a process of NFT evolving from early adopter elitism, elitistic kind of club, to being more democratized by using L2 solutions or Ethereum moving on to Ethereum 2. So things like composable NFT, where people can build upon, even if you don't own NFT, and also the oncoming music NFTs and possibly video NFTs. These things also will probably open up more possibilities for everyone. So definitely it's a process of democratizing NFT in 2022.
Norbert, what are your thoughts?
Well, just in terms of some background to what I'm going to say, we had with our Tokyo FinTech meetup, Yatsui, the CEO of Animoca Brands, for a presentation in June 2019. So that's about 2.5 years ago. And at that time, the claim to fame for Animoca was that, their roll-up play on anything NFT, and at the time already 2.5 years ago, they had sold the first race car NFT for a game that hadn't even been written yet for, if I recall correctly, about $140,000. And since I'm probably more an industry observer than an investor in this space, I think from an intellectual perspective, right, the NFT thing and the collectible approach in this whole industry was kind of digested for me at that time. And of course, the adoption only happened this year, but fundamentally nothing has changed since 2 years ago in terms of how these things are done. And so I must admit that my focus has changed a bit. And if you look at, for example, the Block research report with their assessment of the 2021 happenings and the forecast into 2022, they were saying that NFTs are 60% art collectibles and 40% gaming. So first of all, so far what we talked about was primarily the collectible side, right? There's also the art side. I would actually make an argument there is a third thing that we see developing, and I would label it utility NFTs, which I find very interesting, because we can have a social argument here around what good have NFTs done to humankind, right? And arts and collectible is a fun thing to do, so that gives you some joy. Maybe have a more critical discussion around gaming and the play to earn things. Jose's company just published a report on like a Korean government shutting down play to earn from app stores. So I think it's the first regulatory action as far as I'm aware of. But coming to the third area, utility NFTs. So what I'm really excited about is things that you can do with them. And so there's a company called, or protocol called Superfluid, for example, which allows you to stream cash flows, right? Which essentially then allows you to stream your salary, and your company can stream your salary as you work, and you earn as you work, rather than getting paid once or twice per month. And that making these discrete events real time has an infinite number of possibilities that are opened up, I think, in terms of what's possible. But first and foremost, from a social perspective, right, I think in many markets in the world we have problem with payday lenders, and we've got problems with the poor actually paying an inappropriate amount or percentage for transactions, whether that's sending money back home across the globe, or it's getting the paycheck cashed, etc. And doing this in real time into your wallet straight, I think has a significant social benefit, and that's something I'm tremendously excited about.
So do you see the adoption of using NFTs, maybe other cryptocurrencies, for payment purposes? Is that one of the trends you?
Here in this case, the NFT is basically a representation of your employment contract, right? And so, yes, I think we certainly have developed significant use cases, and it has gotten all the hype in 21 in the art collectibles and the gaming space. But I don't think that is ultimately the only thing that you can do with NFTs. So an NFT can represent a contract, and contracts can cover a wide range of use cases. And whatever the creative people that are building, the builders rather than the talkers and myself, I think they will come up with very, very interesting ideas in that space.
If I can actually just build on that for a second, just because I think that Norbert is exactly correct. I think that actually we're going to see this dramatic shift in the next couple of years from, like, I think the art and collectibles and gaming market they're sort of the pioneers that are figuring out what we can do with technology. But I think you're so exactly right that, and that's why I was saying people won't even necessarily use the term NFT in a few years, because it'll just be tickets, right? Where there's a utility where you get tickets that are verifiable and not, and they would bring a benefit where a team can issue me a ticket to a Real Madrid game, and I can go to that game, or I can sell it on the secondary market. And rather than having another sort of seller in between, like a third-party vendor, I can sell it directly to someone. I make money, the team makes money. Or to your point, you can automate things like donations, where through the blockchain, you can actually automate $1 a day that you're donating to a charity that you like, and you can get some sort of an NFT from that as a sort of piece of social currency to show that you're doing that. Things like housing, where your house or your apartment or your condominium that you own could be on the blockchain as an NFT that you can sort of buy, trade, and get offers on, and build things into that contract, like inspections and other things like that. So I think utility is exactly the way it goes. The example, someone mentioned music earlier. I mean, that's a chief example where if I'm a fan of an artist and they're not super popular, instead of going through a record label where they're not making significant amounts of money, because you see it all the time. The Backstreet Boys were one of the biggest artists in the world, and they were making less than $100,000 in a year because of their manager and record label. Well, now an artist could say, I want to raise money through NFTs, and there are some that are doing this. They could raise $1 million in funding to get their own tour and their own things going. And they could say, with this NFT, the utility provided would be you get early access to tickets, backstage access, merchandise, things like that. Well, now as the artist becomes more popular, that NFT becomes more valuable in the open market. So now that utility that I'm getting from the artist becomes more valuable as they become a worldwide artist, and I can profit alongside my artist. They make the money in perpetuity by building in a secondary royalty in the sales every time it's bought and sold. So I think things like that, as just a couple of examples of use cases, but to your exact point, I think utility NFTs is exactly where we're going. And at the moment, like art and collectibles and gaming is helping power sort of the technology and moving the space forward. But I think long term, it's going to be businesses that are doing customer loyalty programs, businesses that are doing pieces like that, like collateralized loans and things of that nature, that are going to work through the blockchain and be powered by Web3, using verifiable contracts on Web3 to say, hey, this is what we're doing. But I think you're exactly right. I think utility is the way it's going, and we'll talk about the collectibles market and where it's going, but I think that's the sort of short form, and the long term is going to be this technology can be very revolutionary in how it affects virtually every industry. And I think that's where we'll see those applications, and they won't be as sort of fun or flashy. They're not going to get as many headlines, but they're going to make the world fundamentally better in how we do business. So I totally agree with that point. I think it's a really salient point.
Jose, what would you like to see next year as the biggest trend for NFTs?
I mean, I'll say I want to see exactly what Norbert was saying. I want to see utility coming in more often. I think the music industry is one that I mentioned, and tickets would be the other one that I mentioned that I think, trend-wise, what I'd like to see is, what we mentioned earlier as far as building on layer 2s to have gasless platforms where we don't know what, again, people don't know they're interacting with the blockchain, but they are, because it's fixing a problem. And I want to see the movement into utility where, we're able to see sort of like meaningful change in how travel and other industries like that use NFTs to provide real value back to their actual token holders, versus just a, hey, I own this collectible and I hope it appreciates in value. So I think the rotation into utility is a trend I'd like to see, and the rotation away from gas, whether that's Ethereum getting ETH2 or whether that's layer 2 platforms. Those are two, I think, huge trends that I would like to see continue to take off, and that I think will continue to take off based on, kind of behind the scenes conversations I'm having, as time goes on.
Jose, Mitamura thinks about the biggest trend in 2022, huh?
No, I fully agree with what everyone said here about NFT heading into becoming utility token of sorts. And for me, I would say the utility on chain is something that interests me. So, for example, the people are buying NFTs for their artistic and also historical and provenance kind of value at the moment, but I see NFTs as the smallest unit of on-chain metaverse, so they can be used as avatars in on-chain metaverse like the sandbox and at Decentraland. So I would say utility in the sense of not in the real life, but also just purely on chain is also a utility. So that's something I'm kind of really paying attention at the moment.
Thank you, Jose. Tejas, what's your prediction for 2022? What should we expect?
Yeah, I think one thing that I do foresee happening is that we're seeing a lot of virtual land sales that are happening like today, right? And I feel that regulators will take an opportunity to actually come into that and see if something can be regulated there and they can have their piece of the pie. So I do see that part happening in 2022. Along with that, I do see the value in utility-based NFTs. And I know that a lot of big companies are trying to call the metaverse for themselves, but that is not how the world wants to imagine the metaverse. So I think a lot of smaller players would also emerge. Some of them, there may be acquisitions that will happen next year, but I do see a lot of smaller players coming in to contribute to the metaverse, and things such as customer engagement, loyalty programs, or even, for example, like I keep I talk on NFTs and I keep mentioning an example of your car. So things such as your like the battery life of your car or the miles that you've driven, all of those can be recorded on the blockchain that will then be used when your car has to go out for sale again. So I feel that things such as these will pick up next year. But I do believe that if we really have to make a difference, there has to be a lot of focus on not just the application, but at the core infrastructure. There are a lot of companies that are doing great work there, but I still see that there's a lot of potential for disruption at the infrastructure layer for NFTs and the metaverse. So that's where I think a lot of the VC funding will also go next year.
So how do you see NFT projects will be crossing over into metaverse? Well, how do you see it?
I think that there will be a lot of bigger brands that will try to, for example, use the virtual land in Sandbox, and will try to have their own like malls, virtual malls in the Sandbox. People can go in and try these different Nike shoes or sneakers, and those will be NFTs that are created by probably a bunch of artists. So people will try that, people will buy that, they'll explore the metaverse. That is how, and this is just one brand, right? Like the other thing is you may also earn some coins by purchasing on the metaverse, which can be used by some other brand. So that kind of a customer engagement, loyalty program, NFTs, all of them will come together in a very, what should I say? It'll come in a very nice form, for the customers so that it's a very slick interface and there is very little disruption for them. So that's how I think that it will manifest in that way.
Right. Just so if I can build on that, I think that's such a good point as far as how the metaverse is going to go. Like, I think you're exactly right. I think that, you know, we're already seeing big brands come forward. Adidas, who partnered with Bored Ape Yacht Club and Punk's Comics, which are both very like established brands in the space, and they're doing a big metaverse play. We've seen Nike acquire CloneX, which was a big metaverse wearables, company. So we're seeing these entrants into the space as they start thinking about it. Budweiser has released Budweiser cans, which they've talked about having some level of utility, which is 21 plus. So, and they've talked about the Budverse, as they're calling with the metaverse. And so I think the metaverse trend is really interesting. I think one of the really fascinating opportunities in the metaverse, I saw something where a group called Last Slice Collective allowed people to order a pizza, a Domino's pizza, using the in-game currency Mana, which is in Decentraland. So someone was able to go to a kiosk, buy and pay for their pizza with that Mana currency, and have it delivered to their house in real life. Stella Artois did something similar where you could order a beer and Drizzly would deliver it directly to your house. I think that sort of trend is really interesting because it gives value to some of these coins that, places like Decentraland is their in-game currency issue. You know, to make an analogy, imagine if you could buy dinner using Mario coins or Zelda rupees, right? From like older video games. If you could order, all those hours of gaming suddenly matter. And so, that sort of opportunity that, you could be within a game and earning coins or buying coins and currency within a game in a metaverse, and then use that to actually get real world goods and services. It's a trend that I could see happening because, why not? If you're in the metaverse, why wouldn't they allow you to accept that in-game currency to do things? I do think big brands continue to come, for those areas. And I think that there's, that's both good and bad. It's good because it brings more adopters. It's bad because you don't want it to become another sort of corporate run area. So I think that's interesting. I do think it'll also be interesting to follow the metaverse in 2022 and beyond to say, is Sandbox the metaverse property, for example, that exists in 5 years, or does something like a Roblox or a Minecraft or a Bethesda or a Microsoft acquire them and then build their metaverse using that because they have all this built out tech from these games, a Rockstar. So I think like all those metaverse trends are super interesting to follow, but that point about using the in-game currency, buying and trading within it and getting real world services, it becomes an almost new layer of play to earn beyond what we currently see within those metaverses. So I think it's going to be an interesting place where, there's going to be, especially as we're more dispersed and more virtual, more people are going to be going there. So that's going to bring value to those sort of coins.
I'm interested to understand a little bit better in terms of the Asia region, because we kind of touched base about the legal and financial implications, etc. Is Asia, do you think, going to be kind of focused on developing this industry further? What do you think, Norbert, Jose?
Well, I mean, I think you need to split it up into like the different sectors, and I think because we touched upon play to earn just now a bit. If you look at that, XG Infinity, of course, is the big elephant in the room, right? And it's a very dominant in terms of the number of players and the share of global revenue they bring in. But it's also, I think, pretty controversial in that the majority of the players are in the Philippines, and there's a whole industry built around it, as you can read in multiple sources. So you need 3 axes to actually play on it, which is somewhere $350. And so if people try to play Axie to have some income, these are typically the people who can't afford to splash out $300 just to start playing the game, which, by the way, right, is like the highest price of any video game that is out there, whether it's in the metaverse or in the classic world. And so there are these player guilds who fund players and then take a share of the revenue. And we're at the magic 30% again, right? Which is, the number wherever you look at Uber, you look at Airbnb, you look at the food delivery companies. Somehow we allow all these companies to get away with 30%, which in my mind is insane, and it's completely uncompetitive. But it is what it is. So you've got, and I try to over dramatize it, right? But you have poor people playing the game, and actually the majority of the trading volume for the NFTs is not even in the West. It's actually in the US, based on the latest chain analysis report that came out this week. So right, you see this gap of where the money ultimately ends up and who does the hard work, and it's a bit of modern colonialism for me. So there are lots of things that need to be done to make this an equitable market. And if we talk about democratizing and doing things better than in the physical world, here's a good way to start. And this doesn't even launch the conversation whether Axie is actually a pyramid scheme as it stands, because at this part of the journey that they're on, and hopefully it's a journey and it's not all that we've seen so far, highly depends on them getting in new capital, right, to pay the players, and at some point that needs to change. Plus, by the way, as much hype as there is around the game itself, it's anything but decentralized. And the journey they've actually been on is to go from a relatively high degree of decentralization, where the rules of the game are heavily encoded and on the chain, to a model where that actually restricted the flexibility of the game, and they had to remove that. So now many of the rules are off-chain, right? Which is a nice way of saying it's in somebody's spreadsheet, or somebody can flip a switch and the Axie that you're holding is either enhanced or decreased in its capabilities, or it's blocked in its entirety. And that's not what a decentralized ecosystem is for at all. So, I can't bash them completely, right? You know that there are tons of bots around, there are scammers, and if you have fixed rules and you're still an alpha, you're an experimental stage, and I think that's where we are as an industry, then you need the ability to change the rules to fight off these scammers and so on. So I think they have a case, and they have a reason why they did it the way they did, is to protect ultimately their whole ecosystem from these evil forces. But I don't think we can stand here and say, what did we have? I think August was the peak, right, in Axie trading volume, and it has decreased since then. As much hype as there is, and as much impact as they had in actually bringing these new technologies to a broader audience, I think it's far from perfect, and it's really, really just the beginning. There's so many imperfections in there that there's still a long way to go to make it generally acceptable in my mind.
Yes, Jose.
Yeah, for me, what Norbert just said translates into the essential question of what chain do we use and what governance model we adopt for driving the adoption of crypto and NFTs in Asia or globally.
Metaverse, DeFi,
because there are many angles
today
to
we are
this
talking
one.
about one of the
I think
biggest
Japan is the
marketing
host to
right now,
world famous Nintendo and other high quality games.
in a $1 trillion
and that
marketing
requires high
industry.
TPS
NFTs.
transaction per
So,
second. So maybe
you know,
Axie
let's look
is
at
okay
the
with the Ethereum
trends
chain,
that
where
we can be
it's
expecting
mostly
in
kind of collectible
with
kind of game.
NFTs in
But if you
2022.
want to
And with that in
play
mind, I would
higher
like
performance
to
games,
welcome
then we
our
put
panelists.
Ethereum
First and
doesn't work.
foremost,
So
let me
you know,
welcome Tejas Chopra.
from the performance
Tejas
perspective,
is
we
the
also need
TEDx
to think about which chain,
International
and
keynote
also
speaker
you know
on the
this
topics
problem
like
of
blockchain,
centralization.
cloud
We need to
computing,
discuss, you know,
general
which
software
governance,
development.
and I think this kind of
He's
resonates
an
with
NFT
what
enthusiast,
Tejas said about
and during
so
the
much to
day he
do
works for a very small
and so much
company
money going
nobody ever heard
into
of called
NFT
Netflix
structure
as a senior
development
software
in
engineer.
2022.
Hi Tejas, welcome.
Hi everyone, delighted to be a part
Do we
of this
have
panel,
a solid
and
knowledge
so honored
base?
to be sharing the
We
space
clearly
with
see, I think,
folks
a huge
from
need for
that have a great background
growing
in
the
NFTs
community,
and
the
excited
talent
to
around this.
participate, learn, and contribute in whatever way possible. Thank you for having me
Tejas,
here.
I don't know. Thank you.
Netflix.
Next, we
are there
have
any programs that educate
gentlemen
people
all the
about
way from Japan. We
NFTs
actually, I believe,
and,
got two Japan-based
Not really. I
individuals.
think for bigger
First is
companies
Norbert
such as Netflix,
Gehrke.
NFTs have to become
Hope I'm
more
pronouncing
mainstream
it correctly.
before
Norbert?
they dip their toes into it.
Excellent.
Very good,
I
thank
do
you.
see that there is
Yeah,
a lot
so
of
Norbert
skill
is
gap
the
today.
founder of a Tokyo FinTech.
But I also feel
It's
that
a non-profit
sometimes
organization with the
people are too,
largest
like
active
companies are
community of
too
financial
tied up with
technology enthusiasts in
folks that
Japan. We
have
have over
experience with blockchain or
3,500
solidity.
members currently.
Whereas I
if I'm
feel
not
that any engineer, any
mistaken.
software engineer that can reason about
Thank you,
things
Sean.
and
Thanks
that
for
can
having
be
me.
curious can
Yeah,
come
so
in
I
and
spent
contribute
most
to
of
the
my
space and
career
bring their
in capital
experience from
markets. I
different
built
industries here.
technology
So I feel
in the
that
broker
in
dealer,
2022 that will be
basically in
another
markets around the
thing that will
world.
take
And
off, which is
we've been moving back and forth
generalist
a bit. We've
software
been back
engineers
in Japan since
entering into the
2017,
metaverse or the NFT
and
space
now
and
focused
contributing there.
on basically helping
So it
to
is a
educate
very,
people
very ripe
on
industry for
crypto,
discussion,
blockchain,
and there
and
is a
innovation
lot
in
of
financial services generally.
potential money to be made by
Great
engineers. So I
stuff.
think that it's a good
And I
time
think we've
for
got a
companies
peer of
to
yours,
like
also
look for
based in
such
Japan,
talent.
Jose Mitamura, who is the CEO of Cointelegraph Japan.
Steve, what
which
about
is, world's leading
companies
digital
like
media
Nestle?
covering Bitcoin,
Do you
crypto,
think these brands also
Web
looking into
3.0
NFTs
and more?
actively?
Yeah,
Hi,
I
Jose.
think it's
Welcome to
not
Connect
quite as
Club.
much. I'd say the same, the same thing.
Thank you,
Similarly,
Sean,
like
for
it's
inviting me
almost
to
like
this
I think that the
panel.
barrier to entry with
Happy to
companies
be
right
here.
now is that
It's
you have
1
to
a.m.
spend
here, so
based on the
I'm not
cost
turning
of
on my
development a
video
tremendous amount of money just
because
to get started, right? Because
you know, I look
you have
sleepy,
to
so
you have
but
to write people, train them
I'm
up, and
excited.
I agree.
To
And
be here.
in
Thank you.
general,
We are safer
engineers
looking at
or
your
IT
avatar.
programmers
I
could
got
figure
you.
out Solidity
That's right.
and other various
Yeah.
coding
Okay.
languages to
And
get
also,
NFTs moving
allow
forward.
me to introduce,
But I
last
think
but
a
not
lot of bigger
least,
companies are
is
hesitant just because of
Steve
the cost of entry and knowing that there's not an
Kaczynski.
ROI,
I
especially
hope
a lot
I'm
of them
pronouncing
with
that one
large
correctly. Yeah?
shareholders. I think the biggest, and I think
Steve,
honestly on top of
did I get it
that,
right?
no, you got it right. And just give a little bit of extra context on my background for people. I currently,
Please.
if you want to get NFTs for a little bit, there's you have to have like one of the few wallet options from Harvard. You have to load money on in various ways. You have to understand the dynamics of gas and things like that. I think that becomes the barrier to entry, which is why. And I co-founded a decentralized generation network, kind of computers, for example, just kind of decentralized didn't become ubiquitous until right all of the podcasting and things like that. When that complex stuff has been my passion for a little bit now, but in HBR is really kind of my degree, like my real jump into NFTs. But I think we all are kind of sort of a little having them establish a place. Computers were good for us because we were happy with the coding and all that stuff.
Thank you.
I taught myself HTML.
We also know
great,
you
so
work as a brand communication
not everybody wants to
manager
do
at
that.
Nestle.
And so I think my day job is in marketing and artists in general. So I've been doing that at Fortune 500 and multinational. I think NFTs will have a similar sort of arc where right now that barrier to entry.
Allow me to start by asking, what was the biggest
as well as
development
a
in your
tech and knowledge
opinion was
perspective.
this year in
When I
NFT
was talking to
space,
somebody on Sunday night, I spent an
with any
hour and a
other
half
crypto
on the phone
use
with my
cases
friend.
that
He works internationally,
really
half the
kind
year
of
in China, half the year
excited
in
you,
Cupertino,
or maybe even disappointed you this year?
He's extremely smart.
Let's
He's
start
an
with you,
engineer. He
Steve.
knows what he's doing. Yeah, I mean, I think an hour and a half thing this year is kind of the most, ubiquitously used sort of NFT platform, I would say. And if that's NBA Top Shot, the reason why I find it exciting is that, NFTs traditionally are service. And what does that take the average away from is that Ethereum-based NFT trend in 2022. So, as I'm talking to venture capitalists, I'm talking to your question, larger brands. Right now, what I'm learning is that that large companies sort of not Ethereum-based network, from what I can tell, because or they're just kind of getting which requires people to pay large gas fees in order to do transactions. That is huge technology on ramp. It's sort of not because at the end of the day, a lot of these companies, unless Ethereum sort of pivots to that Ethereum 2.0 we talked about. So, I think to me the biggest sort of US dollar that I've seen in NFTs this year, I mean, people can talk about things like Bored Ape less than that, but it means that we're early, we're going to get huge in the mainstream. And I think the companies that are doing that, like in the US, the fact that it's transitioned like very relatable concept of digital collectibles, which are international, frictionless gas platform. Those companies are going to be able to buy and sell those basketball moment NFTs on there without having to even know that they have a crypto wallet or an NFT right now it's hard for a lot of companies that have a large, and so I think sort of the largest presence already that I think it's well established to say, hey, we want the amount of active wallets on there with our business, because it's using and buying and selling NFTs. So I think that's just big, and that's expensive and tough to do. It requires a lot of innovation. You have the opportunity and the knowledge gap and large, companies to come in or people internally. I mean, again, just given my own personal example, we can build in the same way. I started talking about people not even use the term NFT, but say I'm collecting. And there are a lot of people saying, or I'm getting something other or another type of collectible. So to me, that was the biggest story of the year. Even as an opportunity with NBA, to work with one very high-profile worldwide game project, brought people in. Got people into NFTs without even realizing they're getting into NFTs, and now they're starting to on my transaction. Hey, let's talk about NFTs, gas and knowledge base on there, which is great, and I'm excited for it. But I think that's transaction fees. A lot of companies they're just buying and selling. It almost has to. So I think that was probably the big story for me this year, and something I think will actually continue to be a trend with this technology. And right now, companies aren't willing to spend the money.
Okay, allow me to kind of jump in here. Thank you very much for sharing that. But I know a topic of carbon
that's kind of the trend I'm seeing when I'm talking to large
software development is very close to Tejas's heart. Listen, by the way, everybody in the audience, you are free to raise your hand. Are we going to see as a trend more sustainable NFTs in 2022? Do you think on the panel below?
I do believe that is where the world will converge to.
Speaking yellow
because I think that one of the bigger problems
please use that.
It was just mentioned
if
right now
with
with Ethereum and with proof of work is that it actually is an energy problem. It is true that compared to the industries that
really
it is disrupting, the energy impact is still
this
less,
concept
but it is
of
still
community
there. And we do have alternatives like proof of stake and delegated proof of stake, and then there's proof of history now
Do you see this trend
that are
expanding
not
in
as much
2022?
energy impacting to the environment. So I do feel that is where we will trend to as
my heart, as you can see,
the world will move towards. But I also feel that a lot of the development today in the NFT landscape is happening at the application layer, and a lot of network glitches and problems are occurring at the infrastructure layer. So I feel that in 2022 there will be a lot more focus on the infrastructure side of things for NFTs to really become mainstream. And I do agree that NBA Top Shot is actually a very good candidate for showing the power of NFTs, because to the end user, they do not even know that they are interacting with the blockchain. They are just continuing to do what they have been doing in the past, and it is just powered by the blockchain. And I feel that is a great user experience story. And if we can have the same kind of experience in different verticals, that's when I think that NFTs will really become mainstream.
Folks that have I'd like to get a
Jose, if NFTs become a mainstream, does it mean the next trend could be the vast development of Web 3.0?
I know SubTalk's that has a founder who has a background in animation,
I totally echo what Steve and Tejas said about sustainability being key.
And we're starting to see a little bit where we've seen people who have,
I see this as a process of NFT evolving from early adopter elitism,
has sort of
elitistic
done that.
kind of
So I think
club
the IP rights and the ownership of the brand,
being more
the most
democratized
notable one that I'll give as
by
an example
using,
that I really like
you know,
is
L2
Jenkins the Valet.
solutions
So
or
people aren't familiar. Jenkins the Valet is a guy who
Ethereum
bought a Bored Ape that looks like
moving
a
on
traditional American valet, sort of has this
Ethereum
outfit of
2.
like this vest and this sort of hat that you
So,
would see a valet wearing in
yeah,
old
things
school movies.
like
They created this really fun story
composable
around him and
NFTs
decided, you know what, we should
where
do
people
a real
can,
crowd-based
you know,
story.
build
So
upon,
they sold NFTs,
even if
and
you
by
don't
getting these
own
writers room
NFT.
NFTs, you have the opportunity
And
to
also
become a
the
character in the story.
oncoming,
So they're telling a story which adds
you know,
to the
music
lore of the Bored
NFTs
Ape Yacht
and
Club,
possibly
being in the,
video
and they're sanctioned
NFTs.
by
These
Bored
things
Apes.
also
And
will
so my
probably
Bored Ape,
open
for
up
example, could be using that
more
story and have a
possibilities
character
for
built around it, which then builds up the IP of it.
everyone.
So in the past,
definitely,
being a fan of a
it's a
brand
process
lets you
of
walk alongside the brand. What Jenkins
democratizing
the Valet does is not just tell the
NFT
Jenkins story,
in
but allows me to
2022.
potentially tell the story of my ape within that story, grow
Norbert,
its IP, so you can become a
what are your
participant
thoughts?
with the brand. And I think that that's
Well,
a really cool opportunity.
just in terms of some background to what I'm going to
a guy who
say,
did movies,
we have
Ben
with
Meserick,
our
who's
Tokyo
who's
FinTech
who's written a lot
meetup,
of books and
the
written a lot of movies and
Yatsuyoshi
books
CEO
before,
of
who is
Animoca
now
Brands
launching an NFT project. And
for
again,
presentation in
allowing
June
people to participate in the
2019.
process
So
and
that's
vote on
about
storylines
2.5
and
years
actually
ago.
potentially have their
And
IP featured
at
in
that
those
time,
properties.
the
And
claim
as
to
a
fame
holder
for
of the Bored Ape,
Animoca
that gives me the ability to
was
say,
that,
if
I mean,
create a
their
story, my
roll-up
Bored Ape
play
goes up in
on
value or has more
anything NFT, and at
ability
the
to
time,
not only
already
sold in
2.5
secondary
years
market,
ago,
but be
they
licensed
had
for IP rights.
sold
So
the
I think
first
that sort of community
race car
opportunity
NFT
is
for a
enormous,
game that hadn't even
for
been
IP,
written yet,
but I think that we're just
for,
scratching the surface
if I
of what's
recall
possible there.
correctly, about
And I'm really excited to
$140,000
see
US.
how other projects
And
do these, whether it's
since
movies,
I'm probably
books,
more
or
an
other
industry
things,
observer
allow
than
people who
an
have these
investor in this
IPs
space,
to use them in a
I
way
think
that
from
both
an
the
intellectual
community and the actual
perspective,
creator benefits from.
right, the NFT thing and the collectible approach in this whole industry was kind of
Tejas,
digested
maybe
for
you want
me
to
at
add
that
something.
time.
Community on branding.
And of
What do you
course,
think about
the
that?
adoption only
I mean,
happened
I do agree
this year,
that
but
that will
fundamentally nothing
definitely
has
take off
changed
next year.
since 2 years ago in
And
terms of
I
how these
can
things are
foresee a
done.
lot of,
And
and I'm
so,
not talking as someone who works at Netflix because I really don't know how it'll work out at Netflix. But in general, if you are producing content of any form, you definitely want to get on the bandwagon of the metaverse and the hype, and you want to engage with your audience. And today, people are intrigued by companies that are entering the metaverse in different forms. So I feel that this is a great opportunity for a lot of brands and content producing companies to get onboarded to this world of metaverse by partnering with, for example, the Bored Ape Yacht Club. And just having a little foot into the door goes a long way in trying to sell the company's vision to the customers and consumers. So I do see that there is value in doing this. I'm just not sure if a lot of the big conglomerates that are in the media industry are ready for it yet. But eventually they will all come on board, because if you look at the world 10, 20 years from now, that is how the world will be. So going backwards, this is the right time to start looking into it to make that world a reality. So that's how I think.